Okay, so here we are. Today is the 5th of May, 2024. It's the exact point between spring equinox and summer solstice. So it's technically Beltane today, the cross-quarter fire festival, which is often replaced by May Day, May the 1st. But the pedantic sun worshippers would say the 5th of May. It's different each year depending on the Pope Gregory's calendar. But I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation and talk about the days of Holly. So with Beltane, with today, we transition from the days of Oak into the days of Holly. Okay. So this is our third time going round the year. If you go onto the YouTube channel, you can look for Holly 2022, and that will give you the basic lore about the holly tree. And if you go and look for Holly 2023, that session was dedicated to medicine and herbalism of the holly tree and symbiont fungi and so on. So this year, 2024, I'm spelling the years out because it's YouTube and it's an archive. 2024, we're going around the year looking at gods and goddesses and how they may correspond with the 20 trees of the Ogham. And the model we've been using has been a classical world model where the 12 signs of the zodiac correspond with different gods and goddesses. So right now, the days of Holly, if you look on the left-hand side, the days of Holly begin at the very middle of the sign of Taurus, the bull. So it's what each sign has 30 degrees. So it's the 15th degree of Taurus, the bull. And that's today, that's the cross-quarter point, Beltane, or the midpoint between spring equinox and summer solstice. But back to gods and goddesses, in the classical world, Taurus, the bull, was governed by Venus. And in Greek mythology, that's Aphrodite. And in Roman mythology, that's Venus. And in the previous session, which you can look at on YouTube for the oak tree, we explored different Venus goddesses of the Celtic world. So you can look at that in the days of oak. Now, with Holly, we're going to go a bit more obscure and we're going to look at the bull itself. And somebody mentioned during the last session, I think it was Brigid, what about the Pleiades, and they're really important. So we're going to look at those as well. We're going to look at the star law of Taurus, which incorporates the Pleiades. Though strictly speaking, if I was looking back on it, I would place the Pleiades with the days of oak rather than the days of holly. But we'll include them today to make up for not talking about them last time. So here's the star law of now. I'll give you time to look at the picture. So if you go up the center of the image towards the top, you can see it says Taurus. So that's showing you roughly where the constellation of Taurus is. And then dropping down to the left, you can see Gemini. So the days of Holly are the midpoint of Taurus, 15 degrees of Taurus, and then just 3 degrees of Gemini. So it's mostly Taurus and a little bit of Gemini. So when we get to the days of Hazel, we'll be totally in Gemini and looking at the god Mercury and Hermes and that kind of looking at the Celtic Mercury. So if you look at Taurus again, just up to the right of it are the Pleiades. You know, a cluster of 7 stars is how it's usually described. And so it would really belong to the days of the oak tree. So it's in this section of sky between Aries and Taurus, but mostly in Taurus, often depicted on the neck of the bull. Traditionally, in classical mythology, the Pleiades are seen as 7 sisters. That's Greek mythology generally. However, in the ancient world, it was seen in different ways by different cultures. And the Pleiades, as a star group, go way, way back in early iconography. There's this treasure from the ancient world known as the Nebra sky disk, found in Germany, and it belongs to the Bronze Age. The big circles believed to be the sun and the moon, obviously next to it. And between the sun and the moon, there's a cluster of 7 stars. And that's believed to be the Pleiades. So the Pleiades, even though they're a tiny constellation, they were considered of great significance. And it probably was to do with early star watching coinciding with spring equinox in the Bronze Age, you know. So you had the age of Taurus, which was the early Bronze Age, and then you shifted from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries, which is the later, the more up-to-date Bronze Age, and then you're into the Iron Age. So the Pleiades would have been there due east with the sunrise at equinox, so that they would have been a significant, however you want to make sense of it. Now, a friend of mine on Facebook, Caitlin, because we're going to be talking about the bull, she said, "What about cows?" Kind of threw me a curveball at first, but actually, cows is what they are. And so what you really have, and I'll give you some examples in a minute, is you have Taurus the bull, is the stag of the herd, if you like. And then the Pleiades were seen by some cultures as cows. They were the herd of cows following Taurus the bull, if you like. And that seems to be testified by different cultures. So in Egyptian tradition, the goddess Hathor, who can be equated with Venus, but primarily she's often depicted in a bovine way with bull's horns or cow's horns. And it was her horns that made the sun rise to begin a new year. So that's that spring equinox, Pleiades, Taurus thing in the age of the Bronze Age, age of Taurus. Now in Egyptian law, Hathor is seen as the main cow goddess, but she has 7 lesser goddesses or 7 priestesses, and they're named in the Egyptian Book of the Dead as 7 Hathors, and they're depicted as 7 cows, you know. So in this image, the black bull at the bottom left, you can see his bull sack. He's the bull, but all the others are cows. So it's the Taurus, the bull, and the 7 cows, which is like the constellation of the bull in the Pleiades. And here's another depiction of the same thing from Egyptian. So you've got 7 cows and a black bull. You can tell the difference because of the others and the bulls, you know. So that seems to be a definite reference to the Pleiades and the section of sky governed by Taurus the bull. Now, I haven't had time to go into it deeply, but even in Irish law, the god of the sea, Manannan, Maclear, has 7 cows. You know, so that means going back and looking at Manannan, who we touched on with the days of Willow. And he has a magical white horse, which corresponded with Pegasus, but there's also these 7 cows of Manannan, which the goddess Brigid looked after, and they gave a never-ending supply of milk. And that's how the Egyptians saw the 7 lesser Hathors of the goddess Hathor as supplying nourishment to her worshippers. It's the same thing, really. And it's curious that Irish law with the Western Isles of Scotland, the people called the Scoti claimed descent from an Egyptian princess called Scota. So there was in traditional Irish history a belief that they were connected with North Africa, albeit via the Mediterranean sea trade and the Iberian Peninsula, but there was this Egyptian influence on the Scoti, the coastal people of the island. Now, there's more. So I'll just go over this again. The picture on the left shows two important asterisms, which are significant to Celtic studies. We've touched on them on other videos. Now, the pale blue streak running up the picture on the left is the Milky Way. It's more milky than the darker blue. And at the bottom area, there's a hexagon shape called the winter hexagon. And that's Taurus the bull and the constellation of Orion and the big dog and the little bog and the twins and Auriga the chariot. And the Pleiades are just off from it because it's mainly Taurus the bull. So in classical mythology, the god of the river and the father of all the sirens and water nymphs was a god called Achilles. I think I'm pronouncing it right. And he was described as having bull's horns. And the reason for that is because the horns of Taurus the bull dip into the Milky Way river. That at one end of the Milky Way was Taurus the bull. So, and the other end is Scorpio with its sting. So the figure on the right is a traditional image of Hercules ripping off one of the bull's horns of the river god. But it's just to draw attention to this idea that the Milky Way itself was seen as the great river, and it has a bull and the cows at one end. And at the other end, it's got what we call the summer triangle. So if you look on the left, you can see there's a triangle shape made by three bright stars. And these are the stars of summer. It's they relate to Cygnus the swan, Aquila the eagle, and Lyra the harp. Lyra was seen as a small bird, and it's depicted that way on the Gunderstruck cauldron. So simplistically, though, Taurus, the bull and the hunter at one end, and the three birds at the other end. So I've been aware of this and playing with it for a long time. Artwork that's being published this year, The Well Maidens of the Summerlands, the Guinevere artwork, which relates to Venus and the oak tree, there's a big oak tree behind her, is all about Taurus the bull and the symbolism of the bull. And this is a difficult thing to get your head around. I find it difficult. That the constellation of Orion and the winter hexagon are the winter stars. They're in the night sky, visible in the wintertime in the northern hemisphere. But as far as the sun going around the ecliptic, they're now. So on the one hand, they're the winter stars because they're visible, but actually the sun is transitioning through Taurus into Gemini at the moment. So the three birds of the summer solstice on the picture on the right relate to the Gemini artwork that I've already done. So I already was primed with Taurus the bull, Venus, oak, and the significance of three birds, the three birds of Rhiannon and so on, for the summer solstice. And the second Achma takes us through Beltane to summer solstice, takes us through the time of the bull to the summer solstice and the three birds. So I was gobsmacked literally about a month ago when I discovered this thing. Now, this is a first century Romano-Celtic iconography from France. It was found underneath Notre Dame, and it dates back to first century. Now, it's a column of many different panels, but one of them is this bull with three birds on its back, and it's called Tarvos Trigaranus. Garan is Celtic for crane, as in the bird. So here's a thing then. The crane is also a water wading bird. So it's a riverside bird, as well as the bull being close to the Milky Way River. Another image of this shows you a different angle. Oh, this is some modern artwork I found. I was amazed because I'm unaware of the importance of this icon. But there's plenty of other artists picking up on it. This is a lovely picture. I don't know who drew it, but the three birds on the bull is 1st century AD Celtic iconography. So here's another angle of that stone found under Notre Dame. On the right-hand side, you can just about make out the bull and the three birds. It's hard to see, but behind the three birds are what is believed to be willow trees. Now, willow is a riverside tree, as we know. So again, this is called the Pillar of the Boatman, and it was originally placed up by the River Seine in France. Now, on the left-hand side of the pillar, there's a figure with an inscription, and his name is Esus, E-S-U-S. And Esus is believed to mean vitality, well-being, or health, those kind of words. And the theory is that he's cutting away at willow branches. Again, it's a monument on the river, and willow, long known to have aspirin and other healing properties, that was well used in ancient Egypt and so on. So having Esus, who is another candidate for the young Celtic Mercury like Lugh, he's part of a trinity, Esus, Tutatis, and forgotten the other one. His name means thunderer. Anyway, there are a threesome of gods. Esus is the young one, so he's the Lugh, as opposed to Ogma and Dagda being the other ones. That's going to bug me now, trying to remember the other one. But so Lugh, as the young Celtic Mercury, is equated with healing. He has lots of magical treasures, which are all about healing. And Esus himself is a young Celtic Mercury gathering willow branches. So it's really interesting. It's kind of singing of spring equinox and Lugh and the willow tree before the ash tree. And then you've got Taurus the bull leading you to summer solstice and the three birds. And not only have you got the Milky Way corresponding with the bull's head, but running along the feet of the bull going back is the constellation called Eris, the river. So there's all this kind of riverside stuff. Now, what do we know about the bull then? Well, the bull is a huge topic in Celtic mythology, and I would say the ancient world going way back to the Bronze Age. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of things because we still got 15 degrees of Taurus left. And whilst you've got the Pleiades on one side of Taurus, on the neck of the bull, the other side of Taurus leads us deeper into the theatre, the drama of the winter constellation, even though we're in the sun's ecliptic of this time of the year. And I suspect most of it relates to the end of the age of Taurus and the shift into the age of Aries, which happened in the Bronze Age and then brought us into the age of Pisces, and we're now transitioning into the age of Aquarius. This is all to do with the rising of stars in relationship to the spring equinox. So here's a thing. This is from 3rd century Gaul. It's a depiction of Manannan, although there's no inscription, but he's an antlered dude. It's called the Reims altar, and it's from Gaul, 3rd century. Now, the interesting thing with it is at the base of the Manannan figure is a stag and a bull. We've already looked at these in previous Zoom sessions and contemplated the stag being the wild, undomesticated creature of the hunt and a symbol of the wintertime, and that the bull is the opposite. It's a domesticated creature. It was the tractor of the agricultural farming communities of Europe from the Bronze Age onwards. So that they're different in nature. One is farming, one is hunting, one is summertime activities, one is wintertime activities. But here's the thing then. So appreciating the bull, and from a Celtic perspective, Beltane being the beginning of summer, corresponding with the sign of Taurus, the bull, can't be ignored. Now, this relationship with Canunus and the stag and the bull is also on the Gundestrup cauldron. So you've got the famous figure of Canunus, and beside him on the left are a stag and a bull. Now, here's a really amazing brain thing again then, which I'm still digesting and I haven't had time to illustrate it. But remember this, that this figure of Canunus with the antlers is holding in one hand the torque and a serpent in the other hand, the famous ram-horned serpent, corresponds with Samhain, the opposite time of year to Beltane. And the serpent is a constellation called the Serpent's Head. And the torque is a constellation called Corona Borealis, the Northern Crown, are there together in the night sky corresponding with Samhain. Okay, so this is a iconography of Samhain, star lore, if you like. The serpent, the ring, and the winter figure wearing antlers is a figure of winter. A summer figure is going to have bull's horns instead of antlers. So from Roman times onwards, a really important key to understanding ancient star lore are what are known as the mysteries of Mithras, or the Mithraic mysteries. And here's one of his most famous icons. It's called the Tauroctony. Tauroctony, that is the same as Taurus. It's all about the bull and the bull slaying. And I think the bull slaying is to do with the end of the age of Taurus. And this is to be found in different cultures. Now, running above the head of Mithras is an arch, and the arch depicts the 12 signs of the zodiac. So it's telling you this is a star lore iconography mystery scene, if you like. On either side of the bull is a little figure. One's holding a torch upwards, one's holding a torch downwards. We'll get to these guys when we do the days of Hazel, because they're the twins of Gemini. Okay. The main thing is the bull being sacrificed by Mithras in the middle. And there's deeper star lore there to do with the little lion at the bottom. And next to the little lion, there's a big vessel, which is a constellation called Crater, the wine mixing cup. So this is blood being let into a sacrificial vessel as a sacrifice thing. This is old pre-Christian Roman imagery, but it's star lore. That's the important thing. This slaying of the bull by Orion, the constellation Orion, who has the 3 stars on his belt and a sword. So the Mithras figure is actually playing out the role of the Orion, the hunter, successfully defeating the bull. It's going to be really important to understanding Lugh and the Gundestrup cauldron and stuff. But it was just a demonstration. What's a nice little touch on the Mithras figure is there's a crow on his cloak looking down at Crater, the wine mixing cup. The Corvus, the crow, is in the night sky with Crater, the wine mixing cup. And also the crow is a symbol of Apollo and Lugh, L-U-G-H. So I would argue that the Celtic forerunner of Apollo and Mithras is Lugh. And then the Romans come along and say, oh, that's Apollo, that's Mithras. And then medieval Christianity comes along and says that's St. Michael. A lot of St. Michael churches are on old Apollo and Mithraic sanctuaries, which theoretically were on older Celtic places of sanctuary too. Anyway, just to recap, the winter hexagon, the winter stars, is Taurus the bull, Orion the hunter, his hounds, and so on. That star law going way, way back to the first people looking at the stars. This is the middle, the center point of the Gundestrup cauldron. Completely different culture to the Mithraic mysteries of the Roman Empire, you know. But what you have here is a bull in the very center of the Gundestrup cauldron, and there's little details. You can tell it's a bull because his ball sack is between his legs, not udders. And his horns are missing. It's just a sad thing that the horns have been lost. But what would have happened is as the liquid in the Gundestrup cauldron got lower and lower and lower and lower, just the bull's head would have appeared out of the liquid. And then as the cauldron got emptied, you see the whole of the bull in his entirety, if you like. But first, just like the constellation of Taurus, it would just be the bull's head. And then as the liquid disappeared, the whole body. Now, above the bull, you can see a figure with a sword attacking the bull. And next to the sword, there's a little dog. And at the bottom of the bull, there's a big dog. So this is the same imagery of the winter hexagon. It's Taurus the bull, it's a figure with a sword, and it's two hounds, Canis Major, Canis Minor. And it's a Celtic equivalent of this Mithraic imagery. So when you start looking at ancient star lore, you start to see it in different places, you know, that they're all using the night sky to tell their wisdom stories or mysteries, you know. So the bull was part of that. And here's another mad thing. So right now, or when we get into the days of Hazel, we come to the sun's ecliptic journey to the constellation of Orion. Even though Orion is the winter hunter, he on the sun's ecliptic, it correlates with the days of Hazel. Now, here's a thing that I haven't seen mentioned in too many places. There's lots of speculation about it, but Lugh, one of his epithets is of the long arm, or sometimes of the long hand. And people have speculated, oh, it's like the police force, the long arm of the law, or as a king, he had ruled over many lands. But it can be quite literal, you know, it's Lugh with the long arm. Now, here's the thing, Orion has this extended arm going up and up to a very important place called the Stargate. Where the ecliptic crosses the Milky Way, there's a Stargate between Taurus and Orion, and Orion's long arm is pointing into the Stargate where this crisscross happens. But more important than that, in the story of Lugh helping the Tuatha De Danann against the evil Fomorian army, the main big baddie in the Fomorian army is Balor of the One Eye. And it's described that just like David and Goliath, that Lugh used a slingshot and took out the eye of Balor. Now here you have the long-armed constellation throwing something towards the eye of Taurus, the big bright eye. So really interesting. Feel like I'm barely scratching the surface. And even like in Ireland, the river Boann was first described by the cartographer Ptolemy in the 2nd century as the name he gave it meant white cow. And it's sacred. It's named after the goddess Boann. You know, so at the river Boann, which is the river into Meath, the heart of Ireland, is the river of the white cow. So when you think of the bull by the river, or the river god having a bull's head, or Hathor being a cow goddess with 7 other cows and stuff. Anyway, I'm about done in, so I'll close the PowerPoint and we can chat about all of that. But on one side of Taurus, there's the Pleiades, and the other side of Taurus takes you through to the 3 birds of the summer solstice. And there's also Lugh, the young hero, fighting the monster with one eye. Anyway, I'll shut this down, sit back, and you can put your microphones on, and we'll talk about that.
Was the third figure?
I have a question.
Uranus?
Franklin?
Uranus, was that the third name? The Thunderer?
Yeah, yes, Tyrannus. Yeah, he's often depicted with a wheel and a lightning bolt, the Thunderer. And Tutatis is thought to be the same root word as Tuatha de Danann. So it means tribe, or father of the tribe. So you've got Esus, Tutatis, father of the tribe, and Tyrannus, the Thunderer. And they seem to fit quite well. I've written about it in Journal 5 with Lugh Ogma Dagda.
Now, guess Thunderer is Lugh, right?
Yeah, you know, in the classical world, Zeus and Jupiter were carried lightning bolts. So Tyrannus is kind of like a Celtic Zeus or Jupiter.
I had a quick question. The really lovely frieze you showed of Cernunnos, was that, you said 300, was that AD or BC?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the Reims altar. And I think it's 3rd century AD Romano Gaul.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amy? Amy?
Thank you. So all of these things that you're describing, these are the old beliefs, pre-Christian beliefs, systems, how people structured that, and sort of a framework for it.
Yeah, and you know, so without getting into too much of a conspiracy theory, it's well documented that early Christians, well up until the sort of 7th or 8th century, actively destroyed pagan shrines and temples and defaced statues in city walls and all of that sort of thing. So the few bits of iconography we've got have survived all of that vandalism. And everything I've shown you is pre-Christian. You know, so the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as a state religion at the end of the 4th century. But that was very much the ruling classes. And there's plenty of evidence that common country folk carried on with pagan beliefs up until the 10th century and onwards. You know, you could even argue that pagan beliefs never went away. They just shape-shift and hybridize with each century.
It's incredible. So the Tor, the ruins at the top of the Tor in Glastonbury are of St. Michael's Church. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's quite a later church. That there was a medieval church there first, and that got destroyed by an earthquake. So the tower that's there now is the rebuild, and the rebuild's sort of 13th century. 14th century?
I think
14th century.
And the original was
about 11th?
11th.
About 11th, yeah. And before the Norman churches, they were Saxon churches. They were wooden. I mean, but a book I wrote looks at the evidence for a Roman temple predating the Saxon. So the top of the Tor is a very small area, really. And in the 1960s, they did some archaeological excavations. So that small hilltop had a late medieval church. Before that, it had an early medieval church. Before that, it had Saxon wooden buildings. And after all of that activity, in the 1960s, they still found Roman pottery and Roman roof tiles, you know. So
Wow.
that's why I wrote. So and there was about 20 years ago a survey done by archaeologists giving evidence that there was a pagan Romano-Celtic temple there.
Wow.
Can you imagine how difficult it was to
Thank you.
walk up that thing without stairs?
It
I've
seems
just
to have had some sort of processional route, like a spiral, maybe.
yeah, I've just heard recently that the 8th of May, which is 3 days' time, should be a St. Michael's Day. And that's been negated. And the St. Michael's Day is being brought down into the autumn months. But there should be obviously got St. George's Day, and we had the 5 horses running through London. But the 8th of May really should be a St. Michael's Day. And for some reason, it's not happening, and it hasn't happened. So it's been negated from tradition, basically. So St. Michael's been brought into the, I think it's celebrated when the dragon's going back into the earth, but it should be celebrated on the 8th of May. 8th of May. So that comes into
this is just something off the top of my head, so there's no evidence for what I'm about to say. The 29th of September is St. Michael's Day generally, and that corresponds with the sun in the sign of Libra. And Michael is often depicted holding a sword in the scales because of his position in Libra. And it's about judgment of souls after Armageddon and all of that kind of thing. But the other story of Michael is him smiting down the big evil dude. Then that would fit in very well with Orion throwing something into the eye of Taurus. You know, it could fit with that.
But it should
it
should be the 8th of May. So because it's not the 8th of May, the dragon energies aren't allowed to rise up or be celebrated by the people to rise. So there's a severing on the 8th of May because it's not celebrated by the people. It's been done away with.
You would need to check whether the 8th of May is Catholic feast day or Orthodox Jewish, or what's the Byzantine one? There's different Christian.
Yeah, all Orthodox.
Yeah. So the 8th of May might not have been a European observation. It might have been in the Eastern Orthodox Church. I don't know.
Now they're painting eggs red. The Orthodox Church are painting the red eggs, or the eggs red.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I just had a thought about, the classical depictions and writings about the Celts. And Pliny the Elder in the 1st century was writing about, I'm sure you're familiar, the ritual of oak and mistletoe, where 2 white bulls were sacrificed after the mistletoe was cut down.
What's interesting with that is that the Celts do seem to have celebrated the color white with animals of the spirit world or the other world. So him saying white bulls is very interesting. Manannan's cows are meant to be white, and the goddess Boann is white cow. The river Boyne is white cow, and also Taurus is in the days of oak as much as it is holly. So that story of gathering the mistletoe was from oak trees. So with Pliny, you've got oak trees and white bulls together. So it's quite interesting.
There's also, in addition to Boann, I was looking for her in Ireland's Immortals by Mark Williams, and he mentioned, I know I'm not going to say this correctly because I don't speak Old Irish, but Lugh. I'll put it in the chat, but her identity is retrieved via historical linguistics, and it means seed of the calf goddess. And he goes on to talk about the etymology of, again, LOI with a little thing over it, GDE. name given in Irish to the river Bannon, and he talks about how many different cow rivers there are that they can, they don't have in, in myth written down, but they can reverse engineer through place names, which I think is so interesting, how they can look at the etymology of the word. I'll put it in here real quick.
I'm thinking about the spring equinox and the early Bronze Age, so around about 400 BC. Taurus, the bull, would have aligned with the spring equinox. And then as it gradually shifted towards the age of Aries, the Pleiades would have taken over the bull. So the 7 cows would have been more important than the bull after a while, before there was a shift to the age of Aries. And that would have been, that's the very beginning of the Iron Age, if you like, that the Iron Age people are still carrying the memory of that ancestral iconography from the heavens. It's interesting.
Yeah, as you were talking about Hathor, what came to me was Sechet. So Sechet has the 7 leaf over a head, and Sechet was in Egypt the librarian that brought from the library, and she pulled the red cord to design the architecture here on Earth for us, for sort of humans, I suppose. But she pulled the red cord forward, and she had the 7 leaf above her head, and Thoth from Sechet wrote the 742, the Book of the Dead, which is the 42. It's a 42. Can't remember that exactly, but Sechet was very linked, and he brought it through to everybody. Thoth, Book of the Dead, but she was the link with the Pleiades, the 7 leaf over her head, Sechet. So even though you were talking about Hathor, Sechet for me was coming through as you were speaking about her, speaking about Hathor to Sechet, the 7 leaves above her head.
I know it's a completely different culture entirely, but I was just thinking of the white buffalo calf woman as well.
Yeah, and today I'm looking at the white lion. Somebody was talking about the white lion of the Giza, and the 3 pyramids down there, Giza, the whole area there, all being linked to the white lion.
It's really interesting that the 7 cows of Hathor give never-ending nourishment to her worshippers, and the 7 cows of Manannan, who are looked after by Brigid, give a never-ending supply of milk. And some Irish lore claims descent from an Egyptian princess, Scota. So it's just really, you couldn't prove anything, but it's fascinating.
Yeah. Have you seen anything about the description in the King's Chamber of the discovery of a whole star wisdom map around all 4 walls? It's just recently occurred, just come out recently, and it's not only the way it's displayed implies that the time going forward in one zodiac and the precession of equinox taking the time, so the time drops back because it doesn't go so fast. So you've got time going forwards and time going backwards. And there's a lot of stories of the star lore as well there, which is, I must go back and have a look and see if I can see it, because it's just some of what you're talking about, but there's a lot more too. It's interesting.
I'm not aware of that discovery, but I was just realizing too that that disc that was found in Germany, the Nebra sky disc, is thought to be around, where have I written it down? It's around 1800 BC. So 4000 BC, the beginning of the age of Taurus. spring equinox is going to transition to the Pleiades being the spring equinox, and that coincides roughly with the date of the Nebra sky disk. That's quite interesting.
So that's why, yeah.
Two important ideas. One is an ancient name for the Great Pyramid was Taurus Mountain, the Bull Mountain. Horus was the bull of heaven, so a kind of proto-Christ figure, what we would call the son of light or the light man, the man of light. Horus is Bull Mountain. And in the age of Taurus, your money, your wealth, your capital, what makes the world go round, your money is your cattle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's Venus and finance and stuff. Yeah.
And integrity. You either have it or you don't. If you don't, then the world falls apart.
The first two runes in the Futhark are cattle and wild ox. I'm wondering if that's Pleiades and Taurus, because it's plural, it's cattle.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting, because where I am now, right at the Three Rivers on the spine of Albion, in the centre of Great Britain, is a milking farm. Mm. And it really made me think about Hathor. And it's just a small one. On the Tolkien Trail, actually. It's in that area. But again, it's the Tolkien Trail, cattle, Hathor. And there's in the house there's 7 bedrooms, and it's on the Three Rivers. So we've got 3 and 7 prime numbers.
Wow.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Mm. Okay.
I'll stop off, but thank you so much for the presentation. It's good to see you all, even though you couldn't see me. I don't have a camera. Cheers.
Cheerio.
Great questions.
I have a question.
Go on. Yeah.
Okay, could I ask a question? I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, as we say, but in the US, there has been this dairy cows getting avian flu, and it's on the rise. I mean, not every dairy cow has avian flu, but I'm wondering what that says. Is there a message in that? I mean, other than, capitalism is terrible and we need to change how we deal with our animals, but what would be sort of does that mean anything in terms of the star lore? No? Okay.
Oh, well, I mean, Tarvos is depicted with 3 birds, so that's avian, but I don't know.
As we enter the Aquarius, we've reached the nexus on the age of Aquarius, which is an air sign, and we're seeing a lot of things coming, like climate change is air, and so cows having avian flu, that's another symbol of air. And I think because we precess, I think we're seeing a lot of the crisis aspects of Aquarius coming in, which will clear up as we move toward the center of Aquarius. So right now, air is in crisis because this is the way it starts.
Yeah, and also I'm picking up on that, is that you actually really, really in your own stillness, rather than looking at outside COVID or avian flu, whatever there's telling you on the outside, you actually stay in your own center, in your own center, in your own stillness. What is it you feel within your own embodiment?
Follow your breath. Follow your breath to center yourself, so that you fight the war inside your being, right? Come to peace inside your soul in order to calm the world. Don't think the world is going to calm down until you calm yourself.
To come within, and then come back down to go back without again. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording and we'll do our meditation. So turn your microphones off.